G'day, Professor Joseph Drew. I've watched many reform cycles, public policy reform cycles, particularly local government, but also education. And what I've realised is they always follow the same cycle of events. We go through the same steps and we get the same sort of outcomes. And everyone's surprised when their outcome does indeed arrive. I think part of the problem is you don't know the cycle. In this video, I'll set out what I've observed over many decades, and it's invariably what happens. So we do this cycle. We wash, we rinse, and we repeat. And we just go over and over and over again. And everyone thinks it will be different this time. But guess what? It never is. Okay, the inspiration for step one is Sir Humphrey Appleby. If you watch Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you didn't, you're probably a lot younger than I. But he said, quite famously, that you never set up an inquiry unless you know what the findings are going to be in advance. There's a recent inquiry that came out very recently, and I happen to know that that was the case. Now, it's sad. It's probably not what we think happens in a democracy, but it often does. So, step one, set up an inquiry, knowing full well what the findings will be before the inquiry takes place, making sure that you don't call any witnesses that might have pesky, inconvenient facts, making sure that the people conducting the inquiries are, in the words of Sir Humphrey Appleby, good sorts, who do what they're told and do what's expected. That's step one. Step two. I used to be in the military. And one of the things I remember from military strategy classes was that you soften up the enemy before you launch the attack. You send over some barrages of artillery shells. And that's exactly what people conducting inquiries with a specific agenda tend to do. Around the time that the inquiry is being conducted, and certainly before disagreeable decisions are going to be made, there's a barrage of news stories about how incompetent those local governments are, how incompetent those councillors are. You find some misdemeanors of councillors, and there's always going to be some when you've got 540 odd councils. You find some misdemeanors, and you make sure the media knows about them. Now, I've had lots of inquiries from media recently, done lots of radio interviews and some TV interviews. Now, I said to a reporter recently who asked me for an interview, I said, am I right in thinking that the officers of local governments, departments of local governments in various states and certain ministers are very active in sending you media releases about these stories? And she said yes. She agreed. They don't go looking for these stories. People don't realise this. The media report aren't sitting there looking for stories. They get media releases and tip-offs from government departments and ministers and opposition leaders and various interest groups, and then they do the story. So it seems to be the case that we're in a softening up phase. And this has happened in every public policy reform, not just in local government. It's a frequent thing, and people continue to get duped. They see all these stories in the media and they think, oh, yes, these local governments are horrible, terrible, inefficient, corrupt, whatever words we're using today in the media. And then when the recommendation comes from the minister, he's like a genius because he can fix all these problems that we only just found out about. It's curious that people never twig about what's really going on. Now, I must say I'm not talking about any particular inquiry at the moment or any particular media reports at the moment, or in for this slide, any particular companies. But step number 3 is after you've had the public inquiry, you've got these recommendations, and the minister's got to deliberate on them, even though he knew what they were before the report was written. And we've done the softening up barrage before we jump over the trenches. Well, the next step is we get these commercial consultants engaged. And they'll have some research, which gets released to the media with some facts that we could have all Googled ourselves. Or perhaps they'll be paid to do a report. That'll tell us what the story needs to be heard, which is that these councils are corrupt, inefficient, unsustainable, whatever the particular story is today. So when you see the commercial consultants getting involved, you know that we're getting close to the end of that first cycle. And step number 4 is that the minister comes out with his recommendations. Sometimes they're only tangentially associated with why the inquiry was set up in the first place, only tangentially associated with the recommendations of the inquiry. Sometimes there's something ambiguously said in the inquiry, and that becomes the main deal and the main recommendation that comes from the minister. And what follows is disaster. Disaster for the people directly affected by the policy change. Our local government councillors, staff, senior executive, and later, only later, disaster for the communities. I've watched this story so many times, and it's the same cycle all the time. I've even written about it in scholarly papers that got published in A-ranked journals, so people agree that yes, this does keep happening, and I've provided evidence to support that. And of course, you're all sitting there going, what's Joseph banging on about? He's overreacting. People were saying that in 2015 when I told them what was going to happen in 2016. Well, I'm banging about the fact that we keep going through this rinse, wash, rinse, and repeat cycle, and people keep being surprised and keep thinking, oh, it's going to be different this time. It's going to end well for us this time. And they let the guard down and they watch all this misinformation campaign, the softening up, and they read the inquiry report and they think, oh, this is going to be awesome. People are going to drop bucket loads of money on us and all our problems are going to go away. And then out comes the actual decisions and they're disappointed. Look, I hope this cycle isn't repeating somewhere in this country or the world right now, but I suspect it is. Can you please be alert to it? Please be alert and think back on some of the things you've witnessed yourself and tell me if I am indeed wrong. And that's why these videos and my work is so important. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I'm nothing great. People that know me will tell you that for a fact. But I do tell the truth quite fearlessly. People have tried to shut me down at previous universities, high-level interventions from government people, and they know who they are. People who tried to shut me down in court cases, sent me to little rooms, essentially imprisoning me because they didn't want me to hear the evidence being put before the court. And other people can attest to this as being the fact. People have tried to shut down this channel. People who pulled down videos. They do all sorts of things, and lots of people will be happy when I depart or die or whatever. I've only got a few years left because of health reasons. But all I can do is do my best. I can put the facts out there, cause you to think, but you know what? You need to help. You need to flick this video onto someone else. You need to subscribe. You guys in local government need to take control of your destiny and drive this agenda and make sure everyone's alert to these things that I bring up for you. And contribute. Tell me what I should be making videos about. Give me your feedback. If you don't agree, fine. Give me your good reasons for why you don't agree, why you're right and I'm wrong. That's what we need to do. Local government needs to stop waiting for someone else to fix our problem, for the inquiry to fix our problem, for the adjunct professor with no qualifications to fix our problem, for the commercial consulting firm to fix our problem. Stop waiting. We need to get together and fix our problem. It's the only way it will ever get fixed. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.